Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 457. My opponent played e4, I played e5, and then he goes f4, the King's Gambit. So I always like to take it. It's a fun way to play. Occasionally I'll play the declined. You can decline the Gambit with bishop to c5, just to illustrate that line. Sometimes I'll play it, but it's more fun to take, I think. So he goes knight f3, the main move, and I go g5, the main move. The idea is to hold these pawns up and actually exert a cramping influence on the bishop on c1 here, the dark squared bishop. So if you can hold on to these pawns for a while, it's quite useful. And so that's why a main idea here is to undermine with h4. Now one point is that after h4, I'll go ahead and put it on the board, you can't play the move h6 to defend, because he will just take it and take advantage of this pin on your loose rook in the corner. So that's why after h4, g4 is normally played, going forward and attacking the knight. And that's one main line. But the other main way to play it, which is quite respectable, is bishop to c4. And now, given the chance, the best move here, I think, the move I like to play, let me put it that way, is bishop to g7. That defends the rook, so you can meet h4 with h6. And it also defends this square. So the move I played was a bit of a mistake. I played the move d6, which only does one of those two things. It defends this square, but it doesn't do anything about this h4 move. And now white can get a good game here by playing h4. So that's why it's important to keep these ideas in mind when you're playing it. You see a move by your opponent that's not the most standard move. You can look for ways to take advantage of it. So now I can't support the pawn once again with h6 because he can just take it, taking advantage of the pin. So pushing is probably the best thing, but then the knight gets to hop forward to this g5 squared. I covered e5 with this pawn, but g5 is still available now that there's a pawn on h4 defending the knight. The queen is no longer really defending that square. So he gets this attack going on f7 very early. And that would be awkward for me. Okay, so fortunately for me, my opponent didn't spot this idea and instead just castled here. And then we've got an okay position. I play bishop g7, and we've actually transposed back into a normal line. He goes d4, and I go h6 now. I also want to support this pawn, not just in case of at h4, but so I can move this knight out. When this knight moves, it's going to develop to one of these two squares. And that blocks the queen's view of the g5 pawn, which would allow the knight to take it. So you need to get this pawn here to support the... need the pawn on h6 to support the g4 pawn. So that's what that move is about. And now he goes c3. I was surprised by this during the game, but it turns out it's the main move in the database and also one of the top engine choices. So I still don't quite understand it, because this d4 pawn is not yet under attack, but it does, I guess, if he securely defends the the d4 pawn with c3, then his other pieces, the knight and the queen that are currently occupied defending d4, are liberated and can go join in the kingside attack. And this knight is not going to develop to c3, he's going to develop to d2. So I think that's the justification. It's still kind of surprising to me, defending a pawn, taking time out to defend a pawn when you're playing a gambit like this, but apparently it's the move. And now I play knight f6, not the most accurate move here. I think the knight is a bit of a target on f6. Could have played knight to e7 or knight to c6. And he pushes on with e5. Still, I have... oh, he didn't push on with e5. That's the way for him to take advantage of this. After the knight bd2, I have an okay position. Even after e5, my position would still be okay, but white would have a little more play. Anyway, I castle here. He's given me time to castle. And he goes queen b3, ganging up on the f7 pawn. I go knight c6. So he just hasn't played in the most accurate way here, and I have quite a comfortable position from the King's Gambit. I'm basically just a pawn up, and his compensation is mostly gone. But the game goes on. He actually gets back into it at one point, although I keep the edge for quite a long time. So let's go through this. I develop my bishop. Oh no, he retreats his bishop to d3 because I was threatening to come here to a5 and fork the queen and the bishop. I go b6. His queen has got pressure on the b pawn. I really would like to play the move bishop to g4 here, but that just gives up a pawn. So so b6. It's not so much to bring the bishop out on this diagonal as it is to make sure this pawn is secured. But then he goes h3, and now my bishop doesn't have a good square here. That square is no longer available, I mean. So I end up going to b7. Might be a little better placed on d7 because it still looks out at these kingside pawns. I might have some ideas of pushing them, but this isn't too bad. He goes d5. d5 is a mistake. Kind of closes the position up. He wants to keep it a little more open, maybe go queen c2. I think this is an idea. Get the queen over here and threaten to push e5. So d5 leads to kind of a closed position, and my advantage is a little better here after these trades. My king is just quite secure, and let's see, he continues with c4, and these light squared pawns are also blocking in his own pieces. So I'm doing fine here. Let's see, I start maneuvering my knight. He goes queen c2. Let's see, instead of that knight maneuver, I lost some of my advantage there. c6. I thought about c6 a little bit, just trying to undermine these pawns immediately. That's interesting. Or knight to h5. I like that move too. Knight h5, looking at the g3 square. Or maybe just sinking the knight into g3 and leaving there as a thorn in white's side there. Okay, so those are better moves than what I played. Knight d7, still keeping an advantage. Queen c2, and knight to c5. So yeah, that was the idea I had, was to come up here and harass his queen and his bishop. But he kicks my knight, and I end up just trading the knight for this bishop, which wasn't doing a whole lot. So this helped white out a little bit, although I'm still keeping an edge. Let's see, he plays a5 here, advancing on... Oh, no, it's my turn. Oh, I played a5. Yeah, I wanted to kind of resolve the situation over here on the queen side. He decides to push on. And so with the structure closed over here, I think this is pretty comfortable for me. Although I have to make sure that I have a plan for activating my bishops. That's the one concern I have in this position. He goes rook e8. No, I go rook e8. He goes a4, just locking it up. And I bring my bishop, cancel that. Bring the other bishop to f8. It's got some good-looking squares along this diagonal. He goes knight to b3, taking control of the c5 square, or at least preventing me from putting a bishop there. And so I go bishop to d6, just blocking his pawns up. And I am going to maneuver this other bishop back into the game shortly. He goes queen f3. I go queen to e7, queen to h5, looking at my h-pawn, threatening my h-pawn. I defend with the king, and knight d2. So he's gradually moving his pieces over to the king side, but he doesn't have any great pawn breaks over here, so I don't think this attack is likely to go anywhere. So he's moved the knight away from the c5 square, so I throw in this check. King went to h1, and then I went to e3 with the bishop. It's even more interesting, I guess, to put the bishop on b4. Kind of keeps his dark squared bishop tied up, defending the knight. Although he would probably play knight to f3 anyway. That's what he plays after bishop e3. But knight f3, I thought I was getting rid of his good bishop here, but I'm also losing one of my bishops, and so I've given up the bishop pair here. And my remaining bishop doesn't look like it's doing a whole lot. But well, my plan is to get it back in the game on this diagonal. Rook f to d1. Getting his rooks behind the pawns, that's probably a good idea. I go here, bishop d7, and he pushes on with d6. So I kept a slight edge through all of this, but I didn't play the most accurate moves, and he's not so far behind. And maybe pushing through with c5. He wants to try and break open some lines, and it looks like the c5 break is the most effective one for him. After c5, let's see, I can take with a pawn, but he can pile up on this pawn. I can't really defend it very easily, and my pawn structure has been messed up by that. So not too bad for white here. But after d6, I'm really just winning. Although the moment is still to come where he gets back into the game. He has one opportunity here coming up. So I take the pawn, and really I'm just a pawn up, but he penetrates with his rook, and I have to be a little bit careful. There's the idea of taking here and getting pressure on h6. But well, I notice that I'm going to try and get counter pressure on the c pawn. He's going to have to undefend that. So I play rook e to c8, rook c to d1. I figured this is just a trade of pawns. I take the rook and he takes, I take this pawn, he takes this pawn. So I played rook takes c4, and this is White's chance to get back in the game. So there's a chance to spot the tactic. What is wrong with rook takes c4? What does White do to punish that? Okay, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. It's not too hard to spot. I think if you think about it a while, you can find it. Anyway, I'm going to give the answer away now. I played rook takes c4. And you'll see there's one move here that gets him back in the game, and that is knight takes e5. A very interesting kind of fork. So he's forking the rook and the bishop. And if I take the knight, then he just grabs my bishop. And he's harassing my queen. This is a strong attack for White. The material is even, but where is my queen going? Actually, the engine is suggesting giving up the queen. Yeah, if the queen goes to f6, for example, the other rook can come in. And this is horrible. Okay, so after knight takes e5, I can't really take it. I have to, let's see, what's the best move here? The best move is to move the rook. Rook takes, and then he can take off my bishop, and once again, it's really too dangerous for me to take the knight here because his rook will take on d6, and I'll get this pressure on h6 that I was talking about, and I'm actually losing after that. So the way to hold on, and the best I can hope for is a draw now, is to play rook e1 and go for a perpetual check against his king. So that's how White could have at least drawn the game with this tactic, knight takes e5 right in this position. Pretty nice tactic. Okay, so let's see, what should I have played instead of rook takes? I should put my bishop on e6 first. That's what happens in the game, is I manage to get my bishop to e6. So I play there first. He's not going to be able to defend the c pawn, and the bishop on e6 is going to keep his rook out of the d7 square. Okay, so that's the way to play it. So I grabbed here, big mistake, but he didn't spot it. He played here, and now I go bishop e6. So even though I played the moves in the wrong order, I'm back into a position where I'm in good shape. The bishop is controlling some important squares here, and my rook is attacking his pawns, and he can't find a good way to penetrate. He tries knight takes e5. It's probably his best move. I take another pawn. He comes in here to c6, harassing my queen. But the queen can go to f6 now. It's shielded by this bishop. So this bishop on e6 was really a key move in that position. Knight to d8. He's going to take it off, but he has to give up his knight to do it. I develop a rook. Let's see. The chess engine is suggesting, I thought about this for a while. It's saying it's actually good to go ahead and sacrifice the exchange there. Just take that knight off. And play on with a bishop and a rook against two rooks, but with all these extra pawns and with a winning advantage. Interesting. Okay, I thought about that, but I wasn't quite sure, so I allow him to take off my bishop. And this is still good for me. Let's see, after rook c8, what was his best move here? h4, trying to go after the pawn structure over here. Okay, but he wanted to get rid of this bishop. I can understand that. And then get his rook on the 7th rank. But at this point I can start harassing his queen. And I'm in pretty good shape. Actually, I think there's one other chance where he has some play. So let's go on. Right here, yeah. This move here is a mistake. I played rook e3, and he plays this knight's tactic. Instead of moving this rook, I should really bring the other rook to the 3rd rank. I wanted to get a rook over here and harass his queen. But what I was not paying attention to is his queen is indirectly looking at my rook on c8, and that rook is undefended. So after rook to e3, he spots this tactic and plays rook takes f7 check. So and after I take, he grabs this rook over here on c8. So he got a pawn back, and now my advantage is really minimal. If he keeps the queens on, he can draw this game. The problem with the way he played it, well, first I play rook to e7 to keep him from penetrating on the 7th rank, is he went queen c3 and then went for the queen trade right away. And this gives me the win once again, because this is a winning rook and pawn endgame. Just contrary to the saying that all rook and pawn endgames are drawn, this one is probably winning for black. There's pawns on both sides of the board, and I have an easy extra pawn. There's no special circumstances that allow him to blockade, and his king is a little bit out of play. Anyway, rook d6 check. Rook e6. I can defend the 6th rank pretty easily. He comes to d8 to try and harass me from behind. I bring my king forward. I'm just going to start moving these pawns forward and try and get a passed pawn here. He checks from behind, and then I block. And this is really... no, he throws in g4. Yeah, that's a mistake. That just gives up a pawn for no particular reason. He can just continue moving his rook around, rook to h8, or just trying to harass me from behind, and I will gradually and slowly try to move my pawns forward. But this g4 check gives up another pawn. And then this rook trade, after the rook trade, we go into an easily winning king and pawn endgame, and you see the evaluation changes. I don't even need to defend this pawn. He can get it with his king, but I'll still have an extra pawn over on this side of the board, and that will keep his king tied up, and his king can never get too far away from these pawns. And while his king is occupied with the king side pawns, my king runs over to the queen side, and now I have an easy win. So he resigned at this point. So that concludes this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.